Hi, this is Mike. I'm reading Robert Alter's translation of Genesis, chapter 41. And it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed. And look, he was standing by the Nile. And look, out of the Nile came up 7 cows, fair to look at, and fat in flesh, and they grazed in the rushes. And look, another 7 cows came up after them out of the Nile, foul to look at, and meager in flesh, and stood by the cows on the bank of the Nile. And the foul-looking, meager-fleshed cows ate up the 7 fair-looking fat cows. And Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and he dreamed a second time. And look, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, fat and goodly. And look, 7 meager ears, blasted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the meager ears swallowed the 7 fat and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and look, it was a dream. And it happened in the morning that his heart pounded, and he sent and called in all the soothsayers of Egypt, and all its wise men, and Pharaoh recounted to them his dreams. But none could solve them for Pharaoh. And the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, My offenses I recall today. Pharaoh had been furious with his servants, and he placed me under guard in the house of the high chamberlain, me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream on the same night, he and I. Each of us dreamed a dream with its own solution. And there was with us a Hebrew lad, a slave of the high chamberlain. And we recounted to him, and he solved our dreams. Each of us, according to his dream, he solved it. And it happened just as he had solved it for us. So it came about. Me he restored to my post, and him he impaled. And Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurried him from the pit. And he shaved and changed his garments and came before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I dreamed a dream, and none can solve it. And I have heard about you, that you can understand a dream to solve it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, Not I. God will answer for Pharaoh's well-being. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, In my dream, here I was standing on the bank of the Nile. And look, out of the Nile came up 7 cows, fat in flesh and fair in feature, and they grazed in the rushes. And look, another 7 cows came up after them, gaunt and very foul-featured and meager in flesh. I had not seen their like in all the land of Egypt for foulness. And the meager, foul cows ate up the first 7 fat cows, and they were taken into their bellies. And you could not tell that they had come into their bellies, for their looks were as foul as before. And I woke. And I saw in my dream, and look, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, full and goodly. And look, 7 shriveled, meager ears, blasted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the meager ears swallowed the 7 goodly ears. And I spoke to my soothsayers, and none could tell me its meaning. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dream is one. What God is about to do, he has told Pharaoh. The 7 goodly cows are 7 years, and the 7 ears of grain are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 meager and foul cows who came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 meager ears of grain blasted by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he has shown to Pharaoh. Look, 7 years are coming of great plenty through all the land of Egypt, and 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. And you will not be able to tell there was plenty in the land because of that famine afterward, for it will be very grave. And the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh 2 times, this means that the thing has been fixed by God, and God is hastening to do it. And so, let Pharaoh look out for a discerning wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this. Appoint overseers for the land, and muster the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. And let them collect all the food of these good years that are coming, and let them pile up grain under Pharaoh's hand, food in the cities to keep under guard. And the food will be a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine that will be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish in the famine. And the thing seemed good in Pharaoh's eyes and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Could we find a man like him, in whom is the Spirit of God?" And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "After God has made known to you all this, there is none as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and by your lips all my folk shall be guided. By the throne alone shall I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and had him clothed in fine linen clothes, and placed the golden collar round his neck. And he had him ride in the chariot of his viceroy, and they called out before him, "Abrech," setting him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh. Without you, no man shall raise hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and passed through all the land of Egypt. And the land in the 7 years of plenty made gatherings. And he collected all the food of the 7 years that were in the land of Egypt. And he placed food in the cities. The food from the fields round each city he placed within it. And Joseph piled up grain like the sand of the sea, very much, until he ceased counting, for it was beyond count. And to Joseph 2 sons were born before the coming of the year of famine, whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, meaning, "God has released me from all the debt of my hardship, and of all my father's house." And the name of the second he called Ephraim, meaning, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction." And the 7 years of the plenty that had been in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph has said. And there was famine in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. And all the land of Egypt was hungry, and the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all of Egypt, "Go to Joseph. What he says to you, you must do." And the famine was over all the land. And Joseph laid open whatever had grain within, and sold provisions to Egypt. And the famine grew harsh in the land of Egypt. And all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph, to get provisions, for the famine had grown harsh in all the earth.